Here we go. Let me know if you can hear me. Talk back to me. Dungeon family. How's everybody doing? Here we go. Let me know if you can hear me. Okay. We good now. We good now. Welcome to the podcast, Practical Purpose Podcast. Tonight we're talking about principles of process. We're starting a new series about principles of process, right? Because life is a process. Everything in life is a process. So if you don't understand principles of process, then you can't possibly understand life. Right. And this is the most wonderful time of the year. Listen, this is March Madness. If you're not a basketball fan, if you don't watch basketball, you wouldn't understand. But this is the most wonderful time of the year. March Madness, college basketball, ladies college basketball, men's college basketball is all live. Right. And we're able to see that grit. We're able to see that perseverance. We're able to see these athletes give all they have, and it's amazing the things that we've been able to see. So if you hadn't locked in to March Madness yet, it's something to watch. Even if you're not a huge basketball fan, to see the energy of those players is amazing. OG, what's up, man? I'm glad you're here. It's my brother right here. All right, we're talking about principles of process. And you got to excuse me a little bit. I've been fighting this sinus thing that's been going on. This pollen. It's not COVID, but it's affecting my throat. But it's time for us to put in work. So I'm gonna put in work regardless of how I feel about it. Right. All right, so we're going to jump into principles of process in a second, but someone sent a question in, and I want to highlight that question. And anytime you have a question, send me an email, basicwisdomllc@gmail.com. And I hope she's here because I told her to come to the dungeon because I told them you all would answer this question. So I want you to lock into the question, but I want you to put your answers in the chat so we can discuss it. She asked this. She said, should believers, and this is a Christian-based question. All of your questions do not have to be Christian based, right? But she said, should believers go to secular concerts and shows? That's a good question. Y'all tap in. Let me know what y'all think about that. Should believers go to secular concerts and shows? And for my young folk who may be who may be watching, because I know some of my students are watching. I already saw them. This is new edition. You may not know who they are. Google them. This is Jill Scott. This is Erica Badu. And if you're in Columbia, South Carolina, within the past few months, all three of them have come to Columbia, South Carolina. All right. So should Christians, prophetess, I see you. I see you. Should Christians or believers go to secular concerts? I'm waiting for y'all to answer. Somebody else gonna have to answer this one. Should they go to secular concerts? I'll tell you kind of how I feel about it, just a little bit, because I went to see Jill Scott, and Jill was all the way live. Right. I don't think anything was wrong with me going to see Jill Scott. I do think there are some places that you shouldn't go, right? There are some places that'll get you caught up in the wrong mindset if you go there. But I think you have to use discretion with that. Wilmot, Barry, yes, sir. We can't wait to get you on the show, man. Barry will be on here very, very soon. He says everything is allowable, but not everything is profitable. That's good. That's good, right? Everything is allowable, but not everything is profitable. OG says, I know believers that don't go to secular concerts and still ain't living right. Right, right. Hold on. Pecan Tan, what you say? I don't think anything is wrong with believers going to see some concerts. Cool. I like that. I like that. This one is just funny. OG is funny. I got to put that one back up. Believers that don't go to secular concerts and still ain't living right. I think that's a lot of people. That's a lot of people. They don't go. And see, the problem I have with that, OG, is they don't go, but then they talk about people who do go and they ain't living right. But the person who might have went might be living right. Right? Sam says it depends on the concert. I agree. That's a good point. And that's why I said what I said. There are some places that you should not go to. If you know your own weaknesses, your own proclivities, there are some places that you just you shouldn't go. And then I do think if you hold a certain stature, right? If you hold a certain position, there might be some places that you shouldn't go, right? Hypocrisy at its finest, Pecan Tan says. The prophetess says, depends on your purpose for going. That's right. So I think everybody is really answering the question for me. My problem is this when it comes down to church folk like me, that talk about people who go to these things. Now, of course, there's a fine line that you have to cross, or that you shouldn't cross, rather. But also, I get bothered with church folk that go to a concert every Sunday. They go to a show every Sunday morning. They even give money at the concert and the show. And the show is supposed to be biblical, and it's nowhere close to biblical. And they get mad at the people who go see Jill Scott and Erykah Badu and New Edition. But they go to a place that's supposed to be biblical every Sunday, and all it is a show, and they're not mad at that. That's a problem. That's a problem. That's a problem. Some churches we shouldn't go to either. Listen, y'all going in. Right. There's some churches that you shouldn't be going to. Jeremy. Oh, my cousin. What's up, cuz? Everything is permissible. Everything isn't advantageous. Right. Right. I know there's some places I shouldn't go because I know me. And I know what it's gonna do to my mind, to what I'm feeding. Oh my, prophetess says, now you have spoken a word. Entertainment in God's house. Yeah, don't get mad at me for going to a show and you go to one every Sunday. You know, and if I go to a show that you say is secular, or you say is a bad or negative, or a Christian shouldn't be going to, a believer shouldn't be going to, you're going to a place that is supposed to be holy, and they're putting on a show. And you jumping and running and jumping over the pews and falling out, and go home to the same sin. God gave us dominion over it all. That's right. That's right. That's right. And so my point in all of it is this: are there some places that you as a believer should go? Yes, there's some places you should not go. I don't believe you should go anywhere. I think there's some places that you should not go, right? But there are also some things that there are conversations that you have to have, right? So I went to go see Jill Scott. Me and my wife went to go see Jill Scott. There was nothing about that concert that I felt was of sinful nature, right? there was nothing about that concert that I felt was negative or that I felt made me any less of a believer than I was when I went into the concert, right? But had that been maybe a Lil Wayne concert, that might be different, right? There are certain places that you shouldn't go, but it depends on the purpose, and it depends on the type of people that you're going to engage with while you're there. And you got to know yourself, right? But I find it hard that we're so critical of people. And I think I'm gonna put OG comment back up if I can find it. Listen, this is it. I know believers that don't go to secular concert and still not living right. Listen, I know believers who have said, don't go to that concert, and if you go, don't tell everybody you there. That's the height of hypocrisy, right? That's the height of hypocrisy. All right. So I believe it's important. Pecan Tan says, and then we're gonna move on. Exactly, your salvation isn't lost. Right. That's a whole nother topic that I don't want to mess with tonight. But it isn't. But I do believe that you have to make sure you know what you're feeding yourself, and what you're allowing to get in your mind, into your thoughts, because that's going to ultimately determine the decisions you make, and the decisions are ultimately going to determine your destiny, right? So you need to make sure you're aware of what you're putting as far as secular music in your mind, and into your thoughts. Christ was associated with prostitutes, illiterates, the thief on the cross. Right. He spread his message. I like that, cuz. Yeah. And so I think we have to be aware of where we're going, what we're doing, what if is it becoming a stumbling block for other people. But I think we also have to be real. We have to be open. We have to be honest. We have to have those conversations. We have to be people that are not something in the light and something else in the dark, right? We're not a deacon on Sunday, and then we're alcoholic on Tuesday, right? We have to be the same. We have to be the same, and we have to know what's permissible and what is advantageous for us as believers. I thought that was a good question. I wanted to hit that. Wilmot says, y'all keep going. Wilmot says, character, right? In the light and in the dark, character. What's your character? And I think those are situations, especially when you talk about music. Music is powerful, and music has different purposes. You out on a date with your husband or with your wife, you ain't listening to Shirley Caesar. Talk that talk, cuz I see it. You're not listening to Shirley Caesar on a date. You can act like it. Your pastor ain't listening to Shirley Caesar on a date. So I think that's an important question to address, and I like that. Any questions, y'all send it to me, and we will address them on the show. All right, so let's get started. We're talking about principles of process. All right, we're going to be talking a new series on principles of process, and we're going to have guests on. Wilmot Berry will be one of the guests that's talking about steps and stages. But we want to get into this teaching on principles of process, because everything in your life is a process. All right, listen to this.
In the process so that you could go through what was necessary to be tough enough to stand where I'm taking you. Oh, you didn't hear what I'm saying. The process makes you tough. The process makes you tenacious. The process prunes your heart. It purges your sensibilities. It burns out all the things, the wrong motives that you had when you started. God said, I'm going to take you through the wilderness till everything that is not of faith dies in the wilderness, until you come forth as pure gold. The wilderness is designed to kill the unbelief in you, to purge your motives, to prepare your heart. My God, glory to God.
All right, we talking about process. That was Bishop Jakes talking about process, principles of process. Now we're not going to talk about all the principles of process that's possible. We're just going to highlight a few principles of process throughout this series. And tonight we're just going to kind of get started on principles of process. All right, principles of process. If you're ready, let's go in the chat, put something in the chat, put some fire, put something in the chat. Let me know you're ready to go. And we're going to talk about principles of process tonight. Principles of process. What is a process? Listen, a process is a series of actions or steps taken in order to achieve a particular end. Listen, a series of steps or actions that are taken in order to achieve a particular end. Everything in our lives is a process. Everything is a process. Listen, God created everything to be a process. So if you don't understand processes, if you don't understand how to get through processes, you really can't understand life. Think about it. You're born, that was a process, right? Your evolution as a person physically is a process, mentally is a process, spiritually is a process. So it's a process that's ever changing and it's a continual thing, right? So if you don't understand processes, you don't understand how God views processes or how God uses processes, then you can't possibly understand life. Listen, Mark Twain says this: continual improvement is better than delayed perfection. Let me say that again. Brooks, cuz, this my cousin right here, Tip always supports your boy. Tip will text me the first of the month, just say, cuz, how you doing? It's crazy. Like that. I love Tip. Mark Twain says that continual improvement is better than delayed perfection. I thought that was powerful because when you think about delayed perfection, in the church circles, we always say, when we all get to heaven, what a day that'll be, right? And it will be, right? And we always say in the sweet by and by. But we have to be focused on continual daily improvement. I tell my students this, I see one of them on here, Genesis. I tell them all the time, daily decisions determine destiny. And so life is about continually improving, not looking for one day of perfection down the road. Life is about continual improvement. And the process that you're going through in whatever area, in whatever capacity of your life, is a way to continually improve you so that you're ready for the destination. Listen to this. Sometimes it's the journey that teaches us about the destination. Sometimes it's the journey that teaches us about the destination. Listen, if you don't go through anything, you're not going to be prepared for what's on the other end. One thing I used to tell my basketball players years ago when I coached basketball is the first practice we had after I had my team together, after we did tryouts and all of that, first thing I would say to them is this. I would say, we're going to practice 10 times more than we're going to play. We're going to play 10 games this season, right? But we're going to practice 105 times this season. The process of practicing, continually improving, has to happen more than the game, where we get to see the result, where we get to see the end of a thing, right? And so we're so focused oftentimes on the destination, especially church folk. We focus so much on harvest. We focus so much on what God is going to give me, what's going to happen to me, that we don't focus our attention on the process. And we're going to get to it later, but there are some key things that God hides in the process that make the destination worthwhile, right? There's some key things that he hides and develops in us in the process that makes the destination worthwhile. Listen, God fulfills his will and his promises in our lives through processes. Did y'all catch that? God fulfills his will and promises in our lives through processes. Listen, think about Abraham. I hear you, cuz. Think about Abraham. And God says, Abraham, go sacrifice your son. That was a whole process, right? He had to get on the donkey, take all his people with him, get everything that was needed for the sacrifice, travel miles and miles, find a mountain that he didn't know where he was going, go up the mountain, raise the sword, about to slay his son, and then something happens. He had a whole process that he had to go through before he actually was able to really fully walk into what God was having him walk into. Right? There's always a process. Listen, Romans 8:28, we know that one, but it says all things work for our good. But Romans 8:29 says this: whom he foreknew, he predestined to be conformed to the image of his son. Right? So those he foreknew, out of his foreknowledge, would come to him. What does he do? He creates you for a process. Right? To be conformed to the image of his son is a process. So life spiritually, physically, emotionally is a process. It's a journey. It's a journey. Listen, the process brings the promises. Let me say that again. The process brings the promises. Sometimes we have it backwards. We're just excited for the promises. We sing about the promises. We jump over the pews about the promises, right? But nobody's teaching about the process. You don't get to the promise without the process. Listen, Wilmot Berry says this. I heard him say this. He doesn't know I heard him say this, but he said, the day you plant the seed is not the day you eat the fruit. The day you plant the seed is not the day that you eat the fruit. The scripture says that as long as the earth is here, there's going to be seed time and harvest. Right? Some people say seed time and harvest. I like to think of it as seed, time, and harvest. We miss the time part. There's a long period of time between when you plant the seed and when you reach the harvest. And you have to be willing to endure the time between the seed planting and the harvest if you're going to benefit from the harvest. And see, in church circles especially, anytime you hear plant seed, they always attach it to money. Well, the scriptures doesn't talk about money when it's talking about planting seeds. It's talking about the word, right? But in church, you hear money, and then anytime you hear harvest, they're talking about material blessings, right? But in our lives, truly, when you're planting seeds of the word, you're planting seeds of positivity, you're planting seeds of teaching into your children. And then there's going to be a period of time. And then after that time, you reach the harvest. But you don't plant the seed and eat the fruit in the same day, right? There's a process to everything that goes on. Right. Sam says, without process, there is no fulfillment of the promise. Good stuff. Good stuff. Sometimes it's the journey that teaches us about the destination. That's right. That's right. It's the journey. Right. So you have seed, time, and harvest. And sometimes we get so weary in that time stage, right? Because sometimes it's not morning. It's not 2 days. It's not a month. Sometimes it's 50 years, right? Between you seeing the harvest, right? You know that scripture? We heard it all the time growing up. Weeping may endure for a night, but joy come in the morning. And everybody run and shout. But how long is the night? They don't tell you how long the night is, right? The encouraging part is eventually joy is coming, but I don't know how long the night is. I need something to help me prepare for the night so that when the morning comes, I can really appreciate it because I've learned something in the darkness. Listen, the day you plant that seed is not the day you eat the fruit. Think about David. Right? Samuel goes to anoint a king, a new king of Israel. And Saul is still alive, right? Saul is still alive. He goes to anoint a king, and he sees all Jesse's kids, and he says, it's got to be one more still here. And they said, well, David out there, he tending to the sheep. David comes in, Samuel says, that's the one, anoints him. It's at least 15 years between the time David was anointed to be king and the time that David actually sat on the throne as the king. There was at least 15 years, right? Between that time period where the seed was planted and the harvest came, at least 15 years. And the preachers always talk about it, and they said David was anointed before he was appointed. And that was true. And that's a good play on words. It's nice, right? But the process, there was an entire process for that. The process is to grow us before the destination. The process is to grow us before the destination. David had to be anointed at least 15 years before he became the king, because that 15 years was the preparation time that was needed for him to be successful and be the king that God wanted him to be. Right. And so in Psalms 105:19, it says, until what he said came to pass, the word tested him. So that's Psalms 105:19. It says it tested him, right? So the time between he was anointed and the time between he actually sat down as king, he was being tested. And in all of our lives, it's a continuous state of us being tested to see if we're ready for the destination. Whether or not that destination is to be a better father, better mother, whatever it is, whatever the process is, because all life is a process, everything, then we're continuously being tested. And here's the problem. The problem with many of us is, and I struggled with this for a while, when you know you're anointed, but someone else is sitting in the seat that you will occupy one day, instead of us serving that person, what we do is talk about how we're going to be better than that person. Notice what David didn't do. David did not badmouth Saul because Saul was in his seat. David served Saul while he was going through the process of becoming the king, right? He was already anointed, right? But he wasn't appointed to be the king. And in the meantime, that seed, that time, that harvest, in the meantime, he served the person who was sitting in that seat. And that's why some of us can't get promoted. It's because we know that we're anointed, but instead of us serving the person in the seat, we want to ridicule them, and we want to talk about how we can do what they do better than they do. Some of us are anointed and annoying. We're anointed and annoying. Just wait your turn. David had to wait his turn. He served Saul waiting his turn. It was a process. God had him shepherd sheep as a B team level thing to teach him that when you get up on the varsity and you've got to shepherd people, you've got to know how to lead people and manage these systems, right? It's different. It's different. You have to serve where you are. You have to bloom where you're planted until the appointed time for you to sit in the seat. And that's why we can't be blessed, because we know we're anointed, but we're not willing to wait during that time of process. PK and 10. Oh, yeah, clicked on the wrong one. Serve, learn, grow, and wait. Patience. The process brings about patience in us. You know what Paul said? Paul said, and let patience have her perfect work. Or was that James? I think it was James. Patience only comes through going through processes. Patience only comes through going through process. In fact, I'm gonna get to a little later, but Thomas Carlyle says endurance is just concentrated patience. You only become patient when you're in process, right? And David had to be patient. Listen, he had done killed Goliath. He had done all these things, and he was in there with a heart, serving Saul, right? There was time between the fact that he was already anointed to be something and him taking the throne, where he could have become discouraged. He could have backbitten Saul. He could have tried to kill Saul, but he refused to do it. And oftentimes, your character is being tested in the time that you're waiting and that you're in process, waiting for what it is you're about to walk into. Right? So the process is to grow us before the destination. Right? Think about Jeremiah 29:11 again. For I know the thoughts, the plans that I have for you. It's written during a time where they are in captivity. So God knew the plans, God knew the thoughts, but they didn't. And the promising part of the text is the fact that I've got a better plan for you, but right now you're in process. And you've got to make it through the process to get to the destination. Listen, the process is to help us grow our vertical and horizontal relationships. The process is not just for you to grow internally, but it's for you to be able to get with people horizontally on earth to help you through the process. And it builds a relationship with God in you that's going to help you when you get to the destination. Listen, I'm sure when David was out there shepherding sheep, God was talking to him. God was teaching him things. God was showing him things that he would have to be able to use when he became the king. Patience has to be developed. That's right, man. It's got to be developed. And we don't like development. We don't like development. Listen, I said something in one of my leadership videos a while ago now, but I said preparation comes before the promise and development comes before deployment. Let me say that again. Preparation comes before promise and development comes before deployment. God does not deploy who he has not developed. And so if you're afraid of the developmental stage, you're not going to be deployed. If you're afraid of the preparation stage, you're not going to reach the promise. If you're afraid of process, you're not going to get the harvest. If you don't plant seed, if you don't endure during the time, you're not going to get to the harvest. So many of us want to be deployed. We want promotion. We want to sit in the highest seat, but we don't want to be developed. And the process is what develops us. The process is what develops us. Listen, nobody reaches into the ground and pulls out a diamond and puts it on their hand. There's a process, right? Where that diamond has to be cut. It has to be put under a lot of pressure, right? And then eventually, after the process is ready to be a ring. But there's a process, and oftentimes, 99% of the time, the process is grueling. The process is a problem. The process is uncomfortable. And it's uncomfortable to bring out the character in us so that we know how to deal with comfort when we get to the destination. The process is to help us grow our vertical and our horizontal relationships. Listen, whatever that process is, in my mastermind group with Cheese and Wilmot, listen, we talk about processes of becoming a better father or a better husband, all of those different processes. And we're on it together. We're in that battle together, right? We're in it together. And so those horizontal relationships are formed so that when we get to the destination, we've got someone to share it with, right? Evolution. Evolution. God created everything to evolve, right? Evolution. All right. David was in process, right? He was anointed and he had to wait a long time before he was able to walk into what he was supposed to walk into. You think that because you are anointed, that is your time. You still got to wait. You still have to wait. You still have to go through the process. I don't care how anointed you are, trust the process. Right? If you look on the thumbnail that I put up, where is it? Let me see if I can find it. If you look on the thumbnail I put up Joel Embiid, basketball player, right? And when he was asked about how the Philadelphia 76ers were going to rebuild their franchise, his reply was, trust the process. He said, we're going to trust the process. All right. And whatever that process is in your life, I don't know how timely this is for you, but whatever that process is in your life that you're going through, you have to trust the process. How do you do that? You got to trust the God of the process first, right? You've got to know that if I'm going through a process, there is an expected end on the way. And this process is creating something in me that's going to allow me to be my best self when I get to the destination. You've got to trust the God of the process. Another thing you're going to have to do if you want to get to the destination is you have to let go of some people and some things that are antithetical to your progress, right? You've got to let go of some people and some things that's holding you down and holding you back, right? You've got to let some things go. And that's a hard thing for us to do, right? Because we believe in loyalty. We believe in this person has been with me forever. But there are some people and there's some things that you have to let go. Right. And if you're going to trust the process, you've got to let go of anything that is not allowing you to trust the process, right? Right. If you're going to trust the process, you've got to trust the God of the process. You've got to let it go. You've got to look forward. You've got to look forward. You can't always be looking backwards, right? It's hard to drive a car looking backwards. You've got to always be looking forward at where you're going, where you want to become. What do you want to become? Right? Right? And you got to adjust your perspective. The process is not designed for you to be comfortable. The process is not designed for your comfort. The process is designed to make you uncomfortable. Listen, when I think about process, there's so many things. You know, I told y'all before, I like cutting grass and yard work, but the process of a flower or a seed growing out of the soil is a grueling, uncomfortable process. That seed, that seed has to break. That stem has to fight through the soil, and it takes time before you actually see the benefits of that seed. It's a grueling process. Think about a woman having a baby. It's a beautiful destination, but the process is grueling. Your perspective has got to be, this process is designed to make me stronger. This process is designed. Kanye West had a song that said, the song was titled Stronger, but he said, that which doesn't kill me makes me stronger. And that's true. There's so much we learn in the process. And if you cheat the process, you devalue the product. If you cheat the process, you devalue the product. The destination doesn't have all of the lights and the glamour and the glory that it would have if you don't go through the process. Oh, I missed one. Here we go. Seed has to break. Seed has to break. You see, and some of us are there in some area of our lives where we're being molded and we're being broken, right? And you're being broken so that you'll have the strength to go through the process to be able to see the fruit that the seed is supposed to produce. Right? We have to always consider the fact that if we cheat that process, we devalue the product. If we cheat that process, we devalue the product. Right? And it's in our human nature. Think about it. Humans are the only people, we are the only people, right? But the only creatures that hold on to our young for so long. Your kids with you till 18, right? But you have other animal species, as soon as they're able to walk, they're gone, right? And they have to survive for themselves. And what does that do? That makes them so much stronger when they get out, because they're going through a process, right? It's a process. PK Tan says through the dark. Yeah, the process happens in the dark. It happens in the dark. I remember years ago hearing Bishop Jakes preach a sermon called I think it was Treasures in the Darkness. And he talked about how we are molded, we are made when nobody's looking. Right? We're made in those times where you're crying to go to sleep, right? That those are the times where God is forming and making us. Right? It's a process. It's a process. All right. So you have to trust the God of the process. You have to let some things and some people go. You have to keep your eyes looking forward. You have to adjust your perspective. The process is not there to kill you. The process is not there to kill you. The process is to make you stronger. The process is preparation for the promise. The process is preparation for the promise. In that darkness, you learn to trust God. You don't have no choice, right? You have to. You have to. The process is preparation for the promise. So here we go. As we wrap it up, Practical Purpose Podcast. Again, this is a Christian base. We look at life principles from a biblical perspective. So I want to look at some principles of process here in the text in the book of Hebrews. Hold on. Have you ever walked? All right, Shirley. Shirley Caesar. I just hit a few notes on the keyboard, man, cuz you crazy. All right, so let's talk about 3 principles of process. Now there are so many principles of process, but I want to talk about 3 here, and they're found in Hebrews chapter 12. Look at Hebrews chapter 12. If you know anything about Hebrews, many people debate on who the writer of Hebrews is. I believe it's the Apostle Paul, but he says here, look, therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us also lay aside every weight, that's letting it go, and sin which clings so closely, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us. That's verse 1. Let me stop right there. Let me stop right there, because I don't want to exegete verse 1. That'll take a long time. But I do want to say this. Hebrews chapter 12 is written after Hebrews chapter 11. Hebrews chapter 11 is the heroes of faith, right? It's talking about Abraham and Moses and Samson and all those different people who had faith in God. And so they reached their promise because of their faith in God. And so when Paul starts this off, or when the writer of Hebrews starts this off, he says, therefore, he's tying everything he's about to say back to what was said in chapter 11. All right. So when he says, therefore, we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, he's not talking about the people you see every day. He's talking about all of those witnesses that witnessed to the faithfulness of God that was in chapter 11. All right. He's not talking about people that's following you. All right. So he says, he says, we have all of these witnesses, so we've got to do some things. We've got to do some things. So let's look at these principles of process that he says in verse number 2. Looking to Jesus, the founder and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and is seated at the right hand of the throne of God. In that text, just in that verse number 2, the writer gives us 3 principles of process. Let's see what it is. He said, exegete, Bishop. No, not tonight. All right, so let's see. He gives us 3 principles of process right there in the text. Here's the first principle he gives us. He says that for the joy, is in purple, for the joy that was set before him. Here's the first principle. You have to see the outcome. Listen, you've got to see the outcome. When you're going through any type of process, you have to see the outcome. It's that text is saying that Jesus saw the end result. He saw the outcome. It says, for the joy set before him. What was the joy? The joy of knowing that he had accomplished what the Father had sent him to do. For the joy set before him. Listen, balance your focus between outcome and process. Balance your focus, right? Because some people are going to tell you, don't look at the outcome, only look at the process. And then others are going to tell you, don't look at the process, only look at the outcome. But you have to see both. And that text tells us that Jesus, for the joy set before him, he saw the outcome. If you're going to get through the process that you're going through of becoming a better whatever, you've got to see the outcome. Discovery of what you want, clarity, diminishes confusion and wasted energy. Clarity diminishes confusion and wasted energy. You've got to be clear on what it is that you're supposed to become. That's what the text says. It says, for the joy set before him, meaning he was looking to something else. He was looking at the outcome, and his vision of the outcome helped him endure the process, right? So the first principle there in Hebrews 12:2 is to see the outcome. Let's look at the second one. The second one is right there. It's in red. It says, who for the joy set before him endured the cross. Point number 2, principle number 2 is no matter the circumstance, endure. Let me say that again. No matter the circumstance, endure. When you're in process, a process that is designed to crush you, to shape you, to make you, to be uncomfortable, you've got to endure. You don't just see the outcome, you have to endure. It says he endured what? The cross. Endurance, Thomas Carlyle said, we said this earlier, endurance is concentrated patience. Endurance is concentrated patience. What am I concentrating on? I'm concentrating on the fact that I know the outcome. And I know this process isn't designed to kill me. The process is designed to prepare me for the promise. Jim Rohn says this, endurance is often the best indicator of validity and value. Let me say that again. Endurance is often the best indicator of validity and value. You know the value of someone or something because of its ability to endure hard times. You ever look at, like, you go out and you buy wine and it'll say aged for such and such amount of years. The longer it's aged, the better it's supposed to be, right? If you go back to that illustration of a diamond, when you're able to see how that diamond has been crafted and shaped, and the more pressure is put under, the better it comes out. That's endurance. You know the value of something by its ability to endure. You know the value by its ability to endure. Pecan 10 says endurance is not just the ability to bear a hard thing, but to turn it into glory. Right? Endurance is the ability, not just the ability to bear something hard, but to turn that something hard into glory. Right? And that's what Jesus did with the cross. And so the first thing we see in Hebrews 12:2 is you have to see the outcome. You have to endure. Look at the third thing that the writer says here, and we finish. He says, who for the joy set before him, that's seeing the outcome, endured the cross, that's endurance, despising the shame. If you want to go through the process that God has designed you to go through, that's going to prepare you for the destination, you've got to block external and internal negativity. You got to despise the shame. Now, I had heard that a lot of times for a lot of years, and I didn't know what despising the shame really meant. But what it means is Jesus basically disregarded the shame that was brought upon him as he was enduring the cross. He disregarded. People were spitting on him. People were laughing at him. People were mocking him. You go to Mark chapter 15, you can read about how much they mocked him. But it says that he despised the shame. In other words, because he knew the outcome, he was able to disregard the negativity from other places and other people. Jesus disregarded, listen to this now. Jesus disregarded how the process made him look. That's our problem. You're in process, but you still want to look like you're at the end of the process. He disregarded how the process made him look. He didn't care that they was mocking him. He didn't care that they were spitting on him. He didn't care that they were plucking out his beard, right? He didn't care that they put a crown of thorns on his head. What happened was he disregarded all of that because he saw you and I, right? He saw the end of the process. So he was able to disregard the shame. If you're going to make it through whatever process you're going through, you got to make sure that you distance yourself and you block out negative energy, negativity from external sources who may not understand the process. And see, that's the interesting thing about process. Everybody's process is different. Everybody's process looks different, right? And a lot of times, especially as church folk, we expect a cookie cutter process. So this process worked for mom and daddy. So this is the same process you need to go through. But God doesn't work that way. Your process is between you and God designs it and tailor makes it for who you are. So your process looks different. Listen, as Jesus was taking up the cross, right? We know we're getting closer to Easter and all of that. And I'm not talking about all of that, but we're getting close to the Easter season. Jesus, it was something interesting in Mark 15:21 that I saw. Jesus allowed somebody to help him. Think about that. That Simon, I think it was Simon of Cyrene, they said he went and he helped Jesus carry the cross. Jesus allowed Simon of Cyrene to help him carry his cross. The process is not only designed for you, but you have to be humble enough to allow people to help you through the process. I miss one. He didn't let the negativity distract him from the outcome or the end goal, right? Think about that. Jesus is God. Like, he's God. But he allowed somebody to help him carry the cross. It's right there in Mark 15:21. He allowed Simon to help him carry the cross. And the problem is, we go back to those horizontal relationships. We want to be so secretive about the struggle or the process that we're going through, or the uncomfort that we're going, the discomfort that we're going through, that we don't allow people to help us carry the cross. And those people who help you carry or get through that process, you have to remember those people when you get to the destination. Right? You have to remember those people when you get to the destination. And I'm sure Jesus remembered Simon of Cyrene. Listen, whatever the process is that you're in, because you're always in process in some area of your life. Matter of fact, I'll venture to say in every area of your life, you're always in process. You're always going through to get to an expected end. Hebrews 12:2 teaches us, see the outcome. Says, for the joy set before him. It teaches us to endure. Says he endured the cross. Then it tells us to block negative, external negativity. He despised the shame. You can't be worried about what people are saying about you while you're going through the process. You've got to trust the process. You have to embrace the process, and you have to respect the process, because the process is preparation for the promise. You're not going to get to the promise without the process. So here's your homework. I'm wrapping it up. Here's your homework. What pick an area of your life that's in process. You got a lot to pick from. Pick an area of your life that's in process. All right. Identify it. Identify what area that may be. You got a lot to choose from, because we've established that life is a process, and everything in life is a process. Pick an area of your life that's in process. I want you to think about this. Because life is a process, what have you allowed to die that should be in process? Let me say that again. What have you allowed to die that should be in process? There are some things that we just forget about, right? We think we've mastered it, or either we stop really thinking about it or focusing on certain things, and we've allowed them to die off. And because they've died off, we have not been working to improve in that area. What area of your life has died off that you need to put back in process so that you can become better? Right? There are some times that I feel like, man, I've mastered this fatherhood thing, and I stopped focusing. And when I stop focusing and I let, so to speak, let that die in my mind, something happens to wake me up. Something happens to show me that this is an area of your life that should be in process that you've allowed to die. Right? What area of your life should be in process that you've allowed to die? Right? I want you to identify that. And once you identify that, I want you to begin that step of seeing, have I reached the outcome? Because chances are you haven't. And once you reach that outcome, begin that process of working to become, or working to get better at whatever that area of your life is. Pecan Tan, that's the secretary. She says, see the outcome, no matter the circumstance, endure, block external and internal negativity. And I didn't really touch on internal negativity because I didn't see internal negativity in that text. But we as humans, we're different than Jesus was. And we psych ourselves out. We overthink ourselves. We allowed negativity to settle in us that causes us to cheat ourselves in the process. We think about how hard the process may be, and we cheat ourselves. When I'm working with my kids, basketball, and I tell them to run, touch that line, come back. And sometimes my son Caleb will not touch the line. And what do I say to him? You're cheating yourself. You could have went one more inch and you would have reached the goal, but you're cheating yourself. And later on in life, somebody is going to beat you, and it's going to be by an inch because you cheated yourself in the process. Listen, the process is only preparation for the promise. And if you cheat the process, you will devalue the product. Listen, PK and Ted says our cognitive processes allow for thinking traps that stall our progress. Right. We outthink or overthink ourselves. Right. And we start thinking about things that we shouldn't be. We start thinking about purposes that the process doesn't have. We start thinking about how we can cheat the process to get to the promise. But the scripture told us tonight that for the joy set before him, he endured the cross. For the joy set before him, he endured that process because he knew that there was a promise at the end. And we know it. There's so many scriptures that Jesus said that he wanted the glory back with the Father and all of those things. Right. So we know that the outcome that he wanted, he knew he had to endure. Even in the Garden of Gethsemane, he said, man, take this away from me. It got to be another way. He said, but nevertheless, not my will, your will. He knew that there was a process and there was a promise, but the only way he was going to be able to say it is finished was if he finished. He had to go through the process. So your homework, and we're closing it, the homework is what's in process in your life. Pick an area, and I really want you to fine tune and think about what is it that I think I mastered. I've allowed it to die, but it really should still be in process. I think I got it down pat. I need to revisit it because I don't. Right? What is in process, or what is dead that needs to be in process so I can continue the growth that I need to reach the expected end that God has for me. Listen, this is the Practical Purpose Podcast. Again, this series is on principles of process. We're going to be talking about it for the next 2 months. We're going to have on the show my brother Wilmot Berry on to talk about steps and stages. We're going to be talking about cycles. We're going to be talking about seasons. We're going to be talking about all these different areas and principles of process. I want to leave you with these 3 things that go along with trusting the process. You have to embrace the process. You have to trust the process. And you have to make sure that you respect the process, because the process is preparation for the promise. It's Dr. Williams. We'll see you next time.